Everyone likes to talk about the positives when it comes to where they live, but what about the cons? Saskatoon might have a lot going for it, but like any city, it does have its downsides that you're going to want to know about before making the move here. My name's Ryan Guenther, and I'm a local realtor with Realty Executives Saskatoon. If you find any of the information in my video helpful and want to connect with me farther, all my information will be in the description box below, or feel free to drop me a comment and I'd love to chat with you there. In this video, I'm going to discuss the pros and the cons of living in Saskatoon. And while I personally feel that the pros greatly outweigh the cons, there are more negatives to Saskatoon than just cold winter weather. And while I might like Saskatoon, so do the majority of the people that live here. In a performance satisfaction survey done by the city last year, over 80% of the residents all were happy with the quality of living in Saskatoon, the quality of service from the city of Saskatoon that we're all, experiencing as tax-paying residents, as well as rating the quality of service and the value behind it as, good or very satisfactory. And this was also consistent with the exact same survey that was done back in 2021. So over a 2-year span from 21 to 23, the results didn't change within the city and the vast majority of the residents and what they think. So one of the first pros about living in Saskatoon would just be how low our quality of living is in comparison to majority of other places within the country. According to Statistics Canada, we rank considerably lower than pretty much every other, larger city or center, making quality of life here from a financial standpoint of things a lot better than you would experience in pretty much every other city within the country. Next up would be a strong and friendly community. Saskatoon has 300 or over 300,000 people living within it, which, depending on where you're coming from, if you're from a small town, is going to seem like a big city. And if you're coming from, Toronto, is going to seem like a very small city. But nonetheless, for the people that are coming in from smaller places, we don't give off a big city feel in terms of, snobbiness or stuck-upness. It's all pretty friendly, and once you start chatting with people, you'll really see how interconnected and how even with a, decent-sized population, a lot of people seem to know each other in one way or another. Next up would be the city's natural beauty. So Saskatoon is ultimately a larger city relative to the rest of the province. But according to the city of Saskatoon, there is over 200 parks located within the city limits. So, major center, downtown, the whole 9 yards, but we're in no shortage for parks, whether it be your kids going to the park, a picnic, or just, hanging out and being able to relax outside. There's plenty of green space. Next up would be job opportunities. The economy in Saskatoon has been steadily growing, and there is employment opportunities in various sectors, on the job market. And according to the Bureau of Statistics of Saskatchewan, the unemployment rate in Saskatoon is considerably lower than the national average across the country, showcasing a robust job market that, if you're looking for work, it's easy to find along a wide range of fields. And then lastly, we have cultural diversity. According to a 2016 Canadian census report, it's becoming more and more diverse throughout the city with ethnic groups and different cultures represented. And you can see that in some of the, festivals we have, such as Folk Fest, where they showcase, all the different cultures, food, traditions, events and such. And having grown up here my whole life, I can attest to that in terms of there being a far wider range of, cultures in Saskatoon than even when I was back in high school, 12 years ago. And while I would like it to all be sunshine and rainbows, unfortunately it's not. And there are inevitably some cons when it comes to living in Saskatoon. So starting out at number 1, the elephant in the room, we'll just talk about the cold weather. And the winters here are undeniably cold. They're warmer than they were 10 years ago or so on average, but if you're a newcomer coming to the city of Saskatoon, you gotta understand that for 5 or 6 months, sometimes 7 months, depending on how early it comes and how late it leaves, you're going to have some form of winter, with usually at least 3 months of pretty cold temperatures. You know, your average winter day nowadays, -10 to -15 would be a nice winter day with no wind. But you'll have plenty of times where it's, colder than -30 or colder than -40 with the wind chill. And if you're not prepared for that and that's something you're not willing to deal with, then Saskatoon may not be the right place for you. And that's also a decent reason why there's quite a few snowbirds that are retired here that might live in the city that go down to Arizona or a warmer place in the winter months when they don't have to work here. Next up would be limited public transportation. Now, you can get by your own vehicle, end to end in the city in 20 to 25 minutes. So even taking public transportation, it doesn't take that long because the city's not that big. However, we got no subway, we got no, SkyTrain or anything like that, and our bus system has a number of various central terminals throughout the city where you can hop on and kind of begin the route. But depending on where your stop is on the bus route, I remember when I went to university, my bus route took me almost 40 to 45 minutes to get to school, when driving there would have taken me 15 to 20 minutes just based on where the terminal was, where my house was, along the way. So our public transportation in the city of Saskatoon is definitely lacking compared to how fast some of the other things are growing. But it's not all that bad because the city isn't all that big in the grand scheme of things. Another con would be Saskatoon's distance to other major cities. If you're from somewhere in Ontario, you can be 30 minutes or an hour most to some large cities of, over 1 million people. And it's, really interconnected. Whereas in Saskatoon, we're the biggest city in the province. The second biggest city being Regina is 2.5 hours away, and they're not as big as us. So if you want to go to, an Edmonton or a Calgary in Alberta, you're going to be driving, 5.5, 6 hours to Edmonton, 6.5-ish to Calgary or so. So it's something to consider if you need to be closer to other urban centers, and large population densities. Saskatoon is quite the drive to other major cities. So another thing that you may or may not be affected by would be seasonal allergies. So Saskatoon has high pollen counts in the spring and the summer. And then when you couple that with the fact that we're getting, a long winter where all that dead grass is going to sit in the, on the surface and whatnot, and then spring comes along, all the snow melts, and all that stuff gets airborne, I can attest to this growing up when I had some seasonal allergies, that it was always worse in the springtime right after winter, or in the fall time when the trees are all shedding and you're raking leaves and stuff right before winter comes along. And according to the Saskatchewan Asthma and Allergy Society, they say the same thing, that residents might be more prone to seasonal allergies, which could affect quality of life if you unfortunately, succumb to that. And the last con, kind of like the seasonal allergies, may or may not affect you or be important, but would be Saskatoon's limited nightlife options. There's bars, there's clubs, there's things to do. It's not like it's a town with, absolutely nothing to do from a party standpoint of things. However, when last call gets, tossed around and things close around 2 a.m., you're not doing a whole lot more. Whereas in some bigger cities and urban centers, there's going to be a lot more of a thriving nightlife kind of throughout the whole night, and just a lot more options across the board, even in the 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. range as well. So there you have it, the pros and cons of living in Saskatoon. Like any city, there's going to be, unique charm and positives and benefits. for every individual person that you got to weigh, against your own preferences to see if Saskatoon's the right move for you. But if you found any of this information helpful, I'm going to leave all my contact information in the description box below if you want to connect with me farther, talk about any other things the city may or may not have to offer you, or you can drop me a comment in the comment section below, and I'd love to chat with you there. Look forward to talking with you soon.